All right, I'm now being joined on the program to discuss all of this further by two gentlemen. Joining us via Zoom is Maji Wilson, who is, of course, a public affairs analyst. And also joining us here in the studio is Nelson Ekojimi, who is a public affairs analyst as well. Gentlemen, thank you very much for coming on the program.
Thank you.
Let me start with you, Maji. How would you assess the protest so far?
Thank you, DG, and it's a pleasure being on the program today. So far, I would say, while there were, of course, one or two incidences that needed, I would say, fairly a bit more stable than some of the tensions that were witnessed. I would say so far, as was, the case, we had a situation where there was cordiality and clear communication between the protesters and security agencies that were on ground to ensure decorum. I think that has also been the case, not neglecting, of course, a few states that had some incidences and the government had to declare some curfew to bring decorum and ensure that this protest does not de-escalate, or degenerate rather into a situation that cannot be controlled. So far, so good. I also see a situation where both parties, from the protesters, the leadership of the protesters, despite, of course, certain declaration that there is no precise leadership, but you could have you have seen a few individuals that have sort of been engaged in holding government accountable over the years, also lending their voices and stepping on the streets to also raise these issues, coming on board to ensure that there is communication and there is a willingness to engage. You can also see that, of course, some governments have also declared that they are ready to engage. They would send communication to the president, and they will see how they would also respond to the demands of the protesters, as it were.
Nelson, give me your own take. I mean, apart from the violence we saw in some parts of the north that Manji actually referred to, it was relatively peaceful all over. And even the second day of the protest, quite peaceful as well. But then, no doubt at all, what happened in Kano State, nothing good to write home about.
Well, looking at the day one of the protests, if you monitored it closely, like some of us did, we were apprehensive because of the fact that even as we speak, the organizers of the protests are still faceless and unknown, save for their legal counsels. And that truth was also attested to by the Inspector General of Police at his press briefing yesterday. And if you're organizing a protest of this magnitude, one expects you to be responsible and sincere enough to take up the responsibility so that the society will know you, because you cannot be fighting for public good like you claim and remain in hiding. Then it means you have all the ulterior motives, and sadly, that ulterior motive that some of us felt was behind this protest manifested in some states where we saw violence, stealing, looting, and even the killing of a policeman, as well as engagement with the security personnel who tried as much as possible to be civil. By and large, I think I must commend the security operatives for the way they have conducted themselves in this protest, because I saw cases of provocation against the security agencies, but it's like, they were trained for this particular exercise. And looking at the two of the protests, from the reports we have gotten across the state, it has been generally peaceful. A lot of businesses that were shut down yesterday have opened, save for some banks that still remained under lock and key, and has affected economic activities in most parts of the country. By and large, if we have a protest and we have an atmosphere like the one that has prevailed today, I think one will ask for a protest maybe every other day.
All right. Now, Manji, You listen to some of the demands by the protesters. I mean, to be candid, you don't have like, a clear-cut list of demands, if you like. So we have a situation where different groups have their different demands. But then when you look at some of these demands, you find that some of the demands are cut across, like the issue of petrol subsidy. They want it reversed. That's the removal of petrol subsidy. They want it reversed. The issue of electricity subsidy and all of that. But you look at their demands. How do you think they are really realistic, given the prevailing economic situation the country is dealing with? For instance, the reversal of petrol subsidy, a reversal of electricity subsidy, increasing the minimum wage to 300,000 naira.
DG, this is a very, very difficult, question to respond to, because what we have seen, or what we are currently witnessing in the country, is a situation that has depleted or degenerated for several years now. It's not a situation that commenced just a few months ago, or a year or two ago. We country needed to look at its trajectory, its growth trajectory, its development trajectory, and see how we can be able to build an economy that is sustainable, that would ensure that our GDP, is grown, that would ensure that we are able to move from a consumption economy to a production economy, which would ensure that we have stability in terms of economic activities, in terms of the earning power per capita, of every citizen, in terms of even how we're able to have, food security, as it were. But over the years, we have incrementally found a situation that, the economy has suffered a hit, and things have sort of gradually, had an impact, on several sectors of our economy. And while these needs that are being raised today, from the electricity, subsidy that was removed, and the hike in electricity tariffs that we have today, to the issue of fuel subsidy that was also removed by the president, which also impacted on the price of the commodity, and has a ripple effect on not just the transport sector, but when you talk about food, because there is transportation of goods and services from one location to another. And the moment, you have an impact on the major, source of revenue generation for your country and our economy, ripple effect of virtually everything. And this is where we have a major problem. The issue has been one that needed, sort of a very, very, I would say a state of emergency on the economy to ensure that we're able to, reverse the entire, challenges that we face as a country, and not just on a specific area. Electricity generation is critical because, a large population, in the country, are those that are within the small and medium enterprise scale, sector, needing, some form of energy to run their businesses. And with this hike in tariff, it sort of alters, everything that we've been looking at as a country. So the issues, and again, you can't reverse such, years and, of slow growth, of the economy within, with one policy or two policy pronouncements. Yes, it may seem as, you basically have other sectors of the economy being impacted. And as I've been raised, before, a solution as raising the minimum wage may seem ideal. However, you would realize that, across board, this may not, it may create a strain, on the entire economy, and we are unable to meet such obligations, as a country. So by and large, the needs that, as we've seen from one location to another that you've raised that vary, are also a reflection of how people interpret, this situation, how citizens interpret their situation and localize it to their own context. For some, it's an issue of hunger. I do not have food to take care of my family. I cannot put, have 3 square meals based on the earning power that I have today, or even the minimum wage that is being proposed. I cannot be able to meet the nutritional needs of my family. For others, I as a small business holder, I need energy, and this energy is too expensive for me to be able to maintain my business. For others, it's education, it's healthcare. So once you move from depending on where you are or what side of the divide you are, you realize that, the interpretation of the issues would vary. Certainly because everyone or every citizen has, the way or the side of, the coin that is impacting him, or her.
All right, let's come to Nelson. Look, Nelson, it's not as if the government has been folding its arms and doing nothing. I mean, Manji has just talked about the minimum wage. The minimum wage, of course, has been increased to 70,000 naira, even though there's still a debate on that as to whether or not it's enough. Labour has accepted that. The government, not quite long ago, sent about 20 trucks of rice now to different states, to the 36 states of the country each. And just about a week ago, the government said it sent 10 trucks of rice now, of 50 kg rice now, to various states to be sold at 50,000 naira per bag. The government has introduced the student loan scheme. The government has taken quite a lot of measures aimed at addressing some of these demands that these protesters are asking for. But why is it that it appears these measures are still not making impact on the ground? They are not being felt.
Well, the measures, let me quickly respond to the issue of the demands. I've seen several demands and I cannot make a head or tail out of it. I've seen demands that include abolish the legislature to become unicameral, free Nnamdi Kanu. I've seen demands that ordinarily, it shows clearly that a lot of these persons who are out there, maybe those demands were put into their hands or into their minds, don't even understand what is really happening. Because we operate a constitutional democracy and there are processes and procedures through which any government policies will manifest. Then talking about the demands, some of the rational demands, because we have seen rational demands of hunger, we have seen rational demands about electricity, but which shows clearly that some of the protesters don't even understand what transpired in the electricity industry, and even talking about agriculture. So going forward, I believe strongly that the government has its work cut out for it in terms of communication, because I wouldn't know if it is ignorance or mischief, but either of both. If you have the information out there like some of us have it, then you expose people for what they are if they are coming up with such demands. You talk about electricity, for example, and I know for free that the greatest problem bedeviling the electricity sector is the liquidity issue. The discos are buying electricity from the gencos, and people are not paying, or government establishments are not paying, and they cannot, it's what they buy that they will sell. So if they are buying and they cannot make the business run, a lot of them will fold up, and you know what that will translate to in terms of employment and wealth creation in the country. So looking at agriculture, for example, you and I know very well that we have suffered from insecurity over the years, for over decades now, for more than a decade. And the effect is what we are feeling with regards to the prices of basic foodstuffs. And the government, like I know, is not made up of magicians that can turn things around in a jiffy. Things have to take processes. Agricultural policies have to be put in place. It has to be implemented and seen through. And if you look at it, even just some weeks back, the federal government, removed tariffs or made it a zero import duty for 180 days for imported foodstuffs. That is to tell you that they recognize the enormity of the situation and they are prepared to address it. But like I said, they are not magicians. One can only plead with Nigerians that they should show understanding. But most importantly, communication is key. If we communicate properly in the languages that people understand, one man will pass the message to the another man, then the message can be escalated. One woman can do the same, and we need this communication in our local languages, because I saw some of the protesters when they were being interviewed, and I was like, does this person really understand what he or she is asking for? Somebody saying government should provide us water. I'm like, is when where has that
Free
happened
water.
before? So you see so many demands that I wouldn't want to say they are ludicrous, because it's within the right of anybody to make any demands, but it's within our own right to, enlighten him or her, to make him see that, look, this is how it runs. That demand is not logical and rational.
Manji, let me quickly ask you this. Do you think the government has been quite effective? I understand we lost him. But Nelson, just before we go, just before we go,
Yeah.
do you think, we talked about the issue of rice now, for instance. The government announced the other day that, 10 trucks each to the various states have been sent, and that the rice should be sold at 40,000 naira per bag, or 50 kg.
Yeah.
But the point is, people are asking where are these designated centers? That information hasn't come through. Don't you think that's where the government too needs to improve in terms of communicating some of these things to people, so that they really understand and they're able to access some of these initiatives now or measures now that the government has actually put out?
I think that is the responsibility of the state governments, because they are the ones who will earmark designated points. And if the state governments have taken delivery, because as we speak, if the government has made that announcement that we have sent XY to the states, it is for us to also verify if the states have acknowledged receipts. We don't know whether they have gotten it or it's still in the clearance procedures, because, even when such pronouncements are made, there are some, documents that have to be, taken into consideration, and there are some processes that have to be complied with. So, like I said earlier on, I think even the states themselves, the state governments, need to come out and, make the citizen realize that, look, help is on the way. That will go a long way in cushioning the tension, because when people are hungry and they don't seem to get information of where their thirst, if they are thirsty, could be quenched, it gets them agitated. So one will call on the state government, based on the pronouncement of the federal government, to start talking to the people. And one is very grateful that Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu has taken the lead in addressing Lagosians and telling them that even the eco cares, of which Onje Eco is a part, will be coming back on stream soon. And you also expect the states to invest massively in agriculture. It is very, very critical to our existence. I looked at one of the protesters reeling out a chart. If you listen to that guy made sense. So how do we address the pain of such a person or a family? And
that's the key, because that's the key demand.
Absolutely.
The key demand. It's like people are really hungry.
Absolutely.
People are hungry, and you're quite right. Well, I think we'll just have to leave it there. Unfortunately, we lost Manji. But thank you very much, Nelson, for coming on the program. Thanks a lot for your time. All right, that's how much we can take on the program this week. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.